I never thought I would be telling this story. Even now, sitting here in my small apartment with the morning light coming through the blinds, I still have trouble believing everything that happened. But it did happen. Every single moment of it. And I need to tell someone, because keeping it inside feels like carrying a stone in my chest that gets heavier with each passing day. My name is Melissa, and 6 months ago, I discovered that the man I called Dad for 27 years was not who I thought he was. Not even close. Let me start from the beginning, because context matters. Context is everything when you are trying to understand how a person can sit across from their own father at a dinner table and watch him try to destroy their life. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and secrets are currency. My mother, Helen, was a school teacher. She taught 3rd grade at the elementary school I attended, which meant I could never get away with anything. Every teacher knew whose daughter I was. Every parent knew my family. We were the Hendersons, and we were supposed to be perfect. My father, Richard Henderson, was a financial advisor. He had his own firm downtown, Henderson Financial Services, and he was respected in our community. People trusted him with their retirement funds, their savings, their children's college money. He wore pressed suits and spoke in calm, measured tones. He shook hands firmly and looked people in the eye. He was the kind of man other men wanted to be, and other women wanted their daughters to marry. At home, he was different. Not abusive, not in the way people usually mean when they use that word. He never hit me or my mother. He never screamed or threw things. His cruelty was quieter than that. It was in the way he would look at me when I brought home a report card with one B among all the A's. It was in the silence that would stretch for days when I disappointed him. It was in the way he would compare me to other people's daughters, always finding me lacking. My mother tried to soften his edges. She would slip into my room after he had made one of his cutting remarks and tell me that he loved me, that he just had trouble showing it, that I should not take it personally. I believed her for a long time. Children want to believe their parents love them. It is one of the most basic human needs. I had a younger brother, Thomas, who was 4 years younger than me. Tommy was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our father's eyes. He was athletic where I was bookish, outgoing where I was shy, confident where I was uncertain. Our father took him to football games and taught him to golf. With me, there were only expectations and disappointments. I left for college at 18 and never really came back. I went to Ohio State, then moved to Chicago after graduation. I got a job at a marketing firm, worked my way up to account manager, rented a nice apartment in Lincoln Park. I built a life that had nothing to do with my father or his expectations. I visited home for holidays and occasional weekends, but those visits grew shorter and less frequent over the years. My mother died when I was 24. Breast cancer, caught too late. She was gone within 6 months of the diagnosis. I came home for those final months, took a leave of absence from work, and sat by her bedside reading her favorite books aloud while she drifted in and out of consciousness. My father was there too, of course, but he handled her illness the way he handled everything emotional. He retreated into practicality, focusing on medical bills and insurance paperwork and funeral arrangements. I never once saw him cry. After she died, the distance between us grew even wider. Without my mother as a buffer, there was nothing to soften the sharp edges of our relationship. Our phone calls became brief and transactional. Our visits became obligations rather than connections. I told myself I was fine with it. I told myself I did not need his approval anymore, that I had outgrown that childish desire. I was lying to myself, of course. We always are when it comes to our parents. 3 years after my mother's death, my father remarried. Her name was Vanessa, and she was 15 years younger than him. She had been a client at his firm, a widow with a substantial inheritance from her first husband. They met when he was helping her manage her finances, and within a year, they were married. I did not like Vanessa from the start, though I tried to hide it. She was polished and pretty in a way that felt artificial to me, all whitened teeth and highlighted hair and designer clothes. She laughed too loudly at my father's jokes and touched his arm too often. She called me sweetheart in a way that made my skin crawl. But more than that, I did not trust her. There was something calculating behind her smile, something watchful in her eyes. When she looked at me, I felt like I was being assessed, measured, catalogued. I could not shake the feeling that she saw me as competition rather than family. I mentioned this to Tommy once, and he laughed at me. Tommy said, "You are being paranoid, Mel. Vanessa is great. She makes Dad happy. Is that not what matters?" Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just being a jealous daughter who could not handle her father moving on from her mother. Maybe I was projecting my own issues onto an innocent woman. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. I tried to be welcoming and warm, but the feeling never went away. Then came the inheritance. My maternal grandmother, Rose, passed away 2 months before all of this happened. She was 93 years old and had been declining for years, so her death was not a shock. What was a shock was the contents of her will. Grandma Rose had been wealthy. I knew this in an abstract way. She lived in a nice house and drove a nice car and never seemed to worry about money. But I did not know the extent of it until the lawyer read her will. She had investments, properties, accounts I never knew existed, and she left almost all of it to me. The number was staggering, $2.3 million, plus a house in Florida, a cabin in Michigan, and a collection of jewelry that included several pieces worth tens of thousands of dollars each. I sat in the lawyer's office with my mouth hanging open, unable to process what I was hearing. My grandmother had never mentioned any of this to me. Our relationship had been warm, but not particularly close. We exchanged cards on holidays and talked on the phone a few times a year. I had no idea she thought of me this way. The lawyer, a kind older man named Mr. Patterson, explained that my grandmother had made these arrangements years ago, shortly after my mother was diagnosed with cancer. Mr. Patterson said, "Your grandmother wanted to ensure you were taken care of. She was very specific in her instructions. She said that you reminded her of herself when she was young, and that she wanted you to have opportunities she never had." There was a letter, too, handwritten in my grandmother's shaky script. I read it that night in my hotel room, tears streaming down my face. The letter said, "My dearest Melissa, I know your life has not been easy. I know your father has made you feel small, but you are not small. You are brave and strong and capable of so much more than you know. This money is not a gift. It is a tool. Use it to build the life you deserve. Love always, Grandma Rose." I cried for hours after reading that letter. I cried for my grandmother, who saw me more clearly than my own father ever had. I cried for my mother, who was not there to share this moment with me. And I cried for myself, for the little girl who had spent so many years feeling like she was not enough. I should have known that my father would not take this well. The first sign of trouble came at Grandma Rose's funeral. It was a small service, held at the church where she had been a member for 50 years. Family and close friends gathered to share memories and say goodbye. I gave a eulogy that I had worked on for days, talking about her strength and grace and the way she always made me feel loved. After the service, there was a reception at my grandmother's house. I was standing in the kitchen, helping to organize the food that neighbors had brought when my father cornered me. Richard said, "We need to talk about the will." I looked at him, surprised by the coldness in his voice. I said, "What about it?" Richard said, "You know that money should have gone to the family equally. Your grandmother was not thinking clearly when she made those arrangements." I felt something harden inside me. I said, "She was thinking clearly enough to hire a lawyer and make her wishes legal and binding. This is what she wanted, Dad." Richard said, "What she wanted was to spite me. She never liked me, you know that. This is her way of getting the last word." I did not know what to say to that. It was such a petty, self-centered interpretation of my grandmother's generosity that it took my breath away. But before I could respond, Vanessa appeared at his elbow, her hand sliding possessively over his arm. Vanessa said, "Richard, honey, this is not the time or place. Let us talk about this later as a family." She smiled at me, but her eyes were hard. Vanessa said, "I am sure Melissa understands that we just want what is fair." Fair. That word would come to haunt me in the weeks that followed. My father began calling me regularly after the funeral. At first, the calls seemed innocent enough. He wanted to know how I was doing, how work was going, whether I had thought about what to do with the inheritance. But gradually, the conversation shifted. He started suggesting that I should invest the money with his firm. He mentioned that the family cabin in Michigan had always been his favorite place, and that it would mean so much to him if I would sign it over. He pointed out that Tommy was struggling financially and that it would be generous of me to share some of my windfall with my brother. Each request was wrapped in reasonable language, presented as practical advice or family obligation. But underneath it all, I could hear what he was really saying. That money should be his, not mine. That I did not deserve it. That I was being selfish by keeping what my grandmother had given me. I tried to set boundaries. I told him that I was not ready to make any decisions about the money, that I needed time to think. I told him that the investments were being handled by a financial advisor I trusted, someone who was not him. I told him that the cabin and the house were staying in my name, because that was what Grandma Rose wanted. Each boundary I set seemed to make him angrier, though he never raised his voice. His anger was cold and controlled, expressed through silences and cutting remarks, and the way he would look at me like I was a stranger who had betrayed him. Then came the dinner invitation. It arrived in my email on a Tuesday afternoon in October. My father wrote that he wanted to have a family dinner, just the four of us. Him, Vanessa, Tommy, and me. He said he wanted to clear the air and move forward as a family. He said he was sorry if he had been pushy about the inheritance and that he wanted to make things right. I read that email 3 times, looking for the catch. My father was not the type to apologize, ever. In 27 years, I could count on one hand the number of times he had admitted to being wrong about anything. The fact that he was doing it now, in writing, made me suspicious. But I also felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he really had realized that his behavior was out of line. Maybe this was a chance to repair our relationship, to find some kind of peace between us. Maybe I was being too cynical, too guarded. Maybe I should give him the benefit of the doubt. I called Tommy to ask his opinion. Tommy said, "I think you should come, Mel. Dad has been talking about you a lot lately. I think he really wants to fix things." I said, "Has he said that?" Tommy said, "Not in those exact words. But I can tell. Just come to dinner, okay? It would mean a lot to him. And to me." So I agreed. I booked a flight home for the following weekend and tried to ignore the knot of anxiety that had taken up residence in my stomach. The dinner was scheduled for Saturday night at my father's house, the same house where I had grown up. Vanessa had redecorated since moving in, replacing my mother's comfortable furniture with sleek modern pieces that felt cold and unwelcoming. The family photos that had lined the hallways were gone, replaced by abstract art that I did not understand. It was my childhood home, but it did not feel like home anymore. I arrived early that evening, wanting to have some time with Tommy before the meal. He met me at the door with a hug and a smile, looking tired but happy to see me. We sat in the living room and caught up while Vanessa bustled around in the kitchen preparing the dinner. Tommy said, "So how have you been?" "Really?" I said. "Honestly, it has been a weird few months. The inheritance, Dad's reaction to it, all of it. I feel like I am walking on eggshells." Tommy said, "He is not handling it well. I will admit that. But you know how he is. He does not like feeling out of control." I said, "It is not about control, Tommy. It is about Grandma's wishes. She wanted me to have that money. Why can he not accept that?" Tommy looked uncomfortable. Tommy said, "I do not know, Mel. I really do not. But let us just try to have a nice dinner, okay? No fighting. No drama, just family." I agreed, though I did not feel optimistic. Family dinners in our house had never been drama-free, even when my mother was alive to mediate. My father appeared just before 7, looking polished and put together in a button-down shirt and khakis. He greeted me with a stiff hug and told me I looked well. There was something strange in his eyes, something I could not quite identify. Anticipation, maybe, or satisfaction. It made me uneasy. Vanessa called us to the table a few minutes later. She had prepared a roast chicken with all the trimmings, the kind of elaborate meal that felt designed to impress. The table was set with good china and cloth napkins, candles flickering in crystal holders. It looked like a photograph from a magazine, beautiful but somehow sterile. We sat down to eat, making awkward small talk about the weather and work and nothing of substance. My father poured wine for everyone, an expensive-looking red that he decanted with great ceremony. He filled each glass carefully, then raised his own in a toast. Richard said, "To family, to moving forward, to letting go of old grievances." We all drank. The wine was good, rich and smooth with notes of cherry and oak. I took another sip, then another. I was nervous, and the alcohol helped take the edge off. Dinner proceeded uneventfully for the first half hour. We ate and talked and pretended to be a normal family enjoying a meal together, but I could not shake the feeling that something was off. My father kept watching me, his eyes tracking my movements with unusual intensity. Vanessa seemed nervous, her laugh too bright and her gestures too animated. Even Tommy seemed tense, though he was trying hard to keep the conversation going. Then, about 40 minutes into the meal, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. I had gotten up to use the bathroom, leaving my wine glass on the table. When I came back, I saw my father pulling his hand away from my glass, his movements quick and furtive. He did not know I was watching. He did not know I had seen. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stood in the doorway of the dining room, frozen, trying to process what I had just witnessed. Had he really done what I thought he had done? Had my own father just put something in my drink? I must have made some sound, because he looked up then and saw me standing there. For a split second, something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But then it was gone, replaced by his usual mask of calm control. Richard said, "Melissa, is everything all right? You look pale." I forced myself to move, to walk back to the table like nothing was wrong. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what to do. Confront him? Call the police? Run? I sat down in my chair, my eyes fixed on my wine glass. It looked the same as before, the ruby liquid glinting in the candlelight. But now it seemed sinister, dangerous, a vessel for whatever poison my father had slipped into it. I needed to think. I needed to stay calm and figure out what was happening and what to do about it. I said, "I am fine." Just felt a little dizzy for a second. It is probably the wine on an empty stomach. Richard said, "You should eat more." Vanessa worked hard on this meal. Vanessa smiled at me, but it did not reach her eyes. Vanessa said, "Yes, please eat. You are too thin, sweetheart. You need to take better care of yourself." I picked up my fork and made a show of eating, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept replaying the moment I had seen my father's hand near my glass, trying to convince myself that I had imagined it, that I was being paranoid, that there was some innocent explanation. But I knew what I had seen. And deep down, in a part of me that I had been ignoring for years, I was not even surprised. My father had always been willing to do whatever it took to get what he wanted. I had just never imagined that would include hurting me. I excused myself again, saying I needed to check my phone for a work emergency. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall and tried to breathe. My hands were shaking. My vision was blurry with unshed tears. I felt like I was going to be sick. What was I supposed to do? If I accused him without proof, he would deny it. He would say I was crazy, hysterical, making things up. Vanessa would back him up. Tommy would probably take his side too, not out of malice, but out of a desperate desire to believe that our father was not capable of something so monstrous. I needed proof. I needed to know what he had put in my drink and why. An idea came to me then, desperate and dangerous. What if I switched our glasses? What if I gave him back whatever he had tried to give me? The thought made me feel sick. but it also felt like justice. If he was willing to drug me, he deserved to experience the consequences himself. I went back to the dining room, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. I sat down and picked up my napkin, deliberately knocking over the salt shaker in the process. I said, "Oh, I am so clumsy. Let me clean that up." I made a show of brushing the salt off the tablecloth, and in the confusion, I switched my wine glass with my father's. It happened in a second, so quick and smooth that I almost could not believe I had done it. No one seemed to notice. Vanessa was getting more napkins. Tommy was checking his phone. My father was watching me, but his view was blocked by the centerpiece. I sat back in my chair and picked up my new glass, the one that had been his. I took a small sip, just enough to make it look natural. The wine tasted the same as before. If there was anything in it, I could not detect it. My father reached for his glass, the one that had been mine. He took a long drink, not hesitating at all. Why would he? He had no idea what I had done. I watched him over the rim of my own glass, trying to keep my face neutral. What had he put in that wine? When would it take effect? What would happen when it did? The minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Vanessa served dessert, a chocolate mousse that I could not bring myself to eat. Tommy told a story about his job that I could not follow. My father laughed and nodded and seemed completely normal. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. Maybe I was losing my mind. Then, about 20 minutes after the switch, I noticed my father starting to act strangely. He was blinking a lot, like he was having trouble focusing. His words were becoming slightly slurred. He reached for his water glass and missed it on the first try. Vanessa noticed too. Vanessa said, "Richard, honey, are you all right? You look tired." Richard said, "I am fine. Just had a little too much wine, I think." But he did not look fine. He looked like a man who was fighting to stay conscious. His face had gone pale, and there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead. He gripped the edge of the table like he was afraid he might fall out of his chair. Tommy said, Dad, what is wrong?" Richard did not answer. He was staring at me, and in his eyes I saw understanding dawn. He knew. He knew what had happened. He knew I had switched the glasses. Richard said, "Melissa, what did you do?" His voice was barely a whisper. The words were thick and clumsy on his tongue. I did not answer. I just looked at him, this man who had raised me, this man who had tried to poison me, and I felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had broken a long time ago. Something else. Some last thread of hope that our relationship could ever be salvaged. I said, "I saw you, Dad. I saw you put something in my drink. What was it? What were you trying to do to me?" The silence that followed was deafening. Tommy was looking between us with confusion and horror on his face. Vanessa had gone very still, her mask slipping to reveal something cold and calculating underneath. Richard tried to stand up, but his legs would not support him. He collapsed back into his chair, his breathing becoming labored. Richard said, "I do not know what you are talking about. You are imagining things." I said, "Then why are you the one who is having trouble staying conscious? Why are you the one who looks like he is about to pass out?" He had no answer for that. Tommy finally found his voice. Tommy said, "Will someone please tell me what is going on? What is she talking about? Dad, did you really put something in her drink?" Richard said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. I stood up, my legs shaky but holding. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. When the operator answered, I told her that my father had been poisoned and needed medical attention. I gave her the address and described his symptoms. She told me to stay on the line and that help was on the way. Vanessa stood up then, her face twisted with fury. Vanessa said, "You stupid girl! Do you have any idea what you have done?" I said, "I think I just saved my own life." "What did you give him to put in my drink?" She did not answer, but I saw her eyes flick toward the kitchen. I walked past her, ignoring her protests, and searched the counters until I found it. A small amber bottle, half hidden behind the spice rack. The label said it was a sleep aid, but the dosage instructions warned against mixing it with alcohol. In large enough quantities combined with wine, it could cause respiratory failure. It could kill. I held up the bottle. I said, "Were you trying to kill me? Or just incapacitate me so you could do something else?" Richard slumped forward in his chair, barely conscious now. Richard said, "Not kill. Never kill. Just needed you to sign the papers. Just needed the money." His voice was fading, but the words were clear enough. Papers. He had been planning to drug me, to make me sign over my inheritance while I was too impaired to know what I was doing. It was not murder. It was theft. It was control. It was everything my father had ever been, distilled into one horrific act. The paramedics arrived a few minutes later. They loaded my father onto a stretcher and rushed him to the hospital. Vanessa went with them, protesting her innocence the entire time. Tommy stayed behind with me, his face pale and his hands trembling. Tommy said, "Mel, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I swear I had no idea. I believed him." Tommy had always been the favored child, the one who saw only the best in our father. He had been blind to the darkness, the same way I had been blind for so many years. I said, "I know, Tommy. This is not your fault." Tommy said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I am going to call the police, and then I am going to hire a lawyer, and then I am going to make sure he never has the chance to hurt me again." The next few weeks were a blur of police interviews, legal consultations, and sleepless nights. My father survived, though he spent several days in the hospital recovering from the overdose. The police found evidence of what he had been planning: documents hidden in his home office, drafted to transfer my inheritance into accounts he controlled. There was a forged power of attorney, ready to be activated once I was incapacitated. There were emails between him and Vanessa, discussing the plan in detail. It turned out that Vanessa had been the mastermind. She had convinced my father that my grandmother's money was rightfully his, that I had stolen it from him, that they needed to take it back by any means necessary. She had researched the sedatives, calculated the dosages, planned the dinner as a trap. My father had gone along with it because he believed it was justified, because he had convinced himself that he was not really hurting me, just taking what was his. The police arrested both of them on charges of attempted assault and conspiracy to commit fraud. Vanessa tried to blame everything on my father, and my father tried to blame everything on Vanessa. In the end, it did not matter. The evidence was overwhelming. They both faced serious prison time. The trial happened 4 months later. I testified against my own father, sitting in the witness box and describing what I had seen at that dinner table. It was one of the hardest things I have ever done. My father sat at the defense table, looking older and smaller than I remembered, and I could not reconcile this frail man with the monster who had tried to drug me. The prosecutor asked me how it felt to discover what my father had been planning. I said, "It felt like losing him twice. The first time was when I realized who he really was. The second time was when I accepted that the father I wanted him to be had never existed." The jury found them both guilty. My father was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Vanessa got 5. I sat in the courtroom as the judge read the sentences, and I did not feel triumphant or vindicated. I just felt tired. So incredibly, bone-deep tired. In the aftermath of the trial, I had to rebuild my life. Not just the practical parts, though there was plenty of that to do. I had to rebuild my sense of self, my ability to trust, my understanding of what family means. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Chen, who specialized in family trauma. She helped me understand that what my father had done was not my fault, that his inability to love me properly was a reflection of him, not of me. She helped me grieve the father I had wanted and accept the father I had gotten. She helped me find strength I did not know I had. Tommy and I grew closer in the wake of the trial. He had been devastated by our father's arrest, struggling to reconcile the man he had idolized with the man who had tried to harm his sister. We talked for hours, sometimes late into the night, processing our childhood and our family and all the dysfunction we had normalized. He told me things I had never known, like how our father had pressured him to spy on me, to report back on my conversations about the inheritance. He told me that he had refused, and that our father had stopped talking to him for a week as punishment. Tommy said, "I knew something was wrong with him. I just did not want to see it." I wanted him to be the dad I needed him to be, not the dad he actually was. I said, "I know. I wanted the same thing." For a long time. Tommy said, "How did you stop? How did you let go of that hope?" I said, "I am not sure I have completely. But I have learned to build a life that does not depend on him being different. I have learned to be my own source of validation." It was not easy, and it did not happen overnight. There were days when I woke up and the weight of everything felt unbearable. There were nights when I lay awake, replaying the dinner in my mind, imagining what would have happened if I had not seen him slip something into my drink. There were moments when I caught myself reaching for my phone to call him, forgetting for a second that he was in prison, forgetting for a second who he really was. But gradually, slowly, things got better. I threw myself into my work and earned a promotion. I used some of my grandmother's money to start a scholarship fund for first-generation college students, honoring her memory and her belief in opportunity. I bought a small house with a garden and learned to grow tomatoes and basil and peppers. I adopted a cat, an orange tabby named Rosie after my grandmother, who kept me company on lonely evenings. I also started dating again, something I had avoided for years. I met a man named David at a friend's birthday party, a high school teacher with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. Our first date was coffee, and we talked for 3 hours. Our second date was a hike in the forest preserves, and he held my hand when I stumbled over a root. Our third date was dinner at his apartment, and he cooked pasta from scratch while I sat on his counter and watched. David said, "You are staring at me." I said, "I am sorry." "Is that weird?" David said, "No, it is nice, but you have this look on your face like you are waiting for the other shoe to drop." I did not know what to say to that. He was right. I was waiting. I was always waiting for the people I cared about to reveal their true, terrible selves. I said, "I have trust issues, big ones. I should probably warn you about that." David put down his wooden spoon and came to stand in front of me. He took my hands in his thumbs rubbing gentle circles on my wrists. David said, "I am not going anywhere, and I do not expect you to trust me right away. I am going to earn it, okay? One day at a time." I started crying then, which was embarrassing. But David just held me and let me cry, and he did not ask for explanations or apologies. He just gave me space to feel what I was feeling. That was a year ago. We are still together, still taking it one day at a time. I have not told him everything about my father yet, but I have told him enough. He knows about the trial and the prison sentence and the inheritance. He knows that family is a complicated subject for me. He does not push for more than I am ready to give. Last month, I received a letter from my father. It was the first time he had tried to contact me since his conviction. The prison allows limited correspondence, and apparently he had finally decided to use it. I almost threw the letter away without reading it. I almost burned it or shredded it or flushed it down the toilet. But something made me open it. Maybe curiosity, maybe masochism, maybe some lingering hope that I have not managed to kill despite everything. The letter was short. It said, "Melissa, I know you probably do not want to hear from me. I understand if you throw this away. But I need to say something. I need to say that I am sorry. Not just for what happened at the dinner. For everything. For all the years I made you feel like you were not enough. For all the times I chose my pride over your happiness. For all the ways I failed you as a father. I was wrong. About everything. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I do not expect your forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I finally see what I was. And I am ashamed. Your father, Richard. I read that letter 100 times. I analyzed every word, looking for manipulation, for ulterior motives, for the catch that had to be there. My father never apologized. My father never admitted he was wrong. This letter felt like it came from a stranger. I talked to Dr. Chen about it at our next session. Dr. Chen said, "How did reading the letter make you feel?" I said, "Confused, angry, sad, hopeful, all of it at once." Dr. Chen said, "Those are all valid responses. What do you want to do with those feelings?" I said, "I do not know. Part of me wants to believe him. Part of me thinks it is just another manipulation, another way to get something from me. Part of me does not care either way, because nothing he says can undo what he did." Dr. Chen said, "You do not have to decide anything right now. You do not have to respond to the letter. You do not have to forgive him. You do not have to let him back into your life in any form. The only thing you have to do is take care of yourself." She was right. She usually was. I did not respond to the letter. I put it in a box in my closet, along with other artifacts from my past that I was not ready to deal with. Maybe someday I would be ready. Maybe someday I would write back or visit him in prison or have some kind of conversation that could begin to repair what was broken between us. But that day was not today, and it might not be tomorrow, and that was okay. Healing is not a straight line. It is not a destination you arrive at and then you are done. It is a process, ongoing and messy and full of setbacks. Some days I feel strong and capable and ready to take on the world. Some days I feel fragile and scared and certain that the people I love will eventually betray me. Both of those things are true. Both of those things are part of who I am now. I think about my grandmother a lot. I think about the letter she left me, the one that told me I was brave and strong and capable of so much more than I knew. I keep that letter in my nightstand, and I read it whenever I need to remember that someone believed in me, that someone saw me as I truly was and loved me anyway. I'm trying to become the person she saw in me. I'm trying to build the life she wanted me to have. It is not always easy. There are days when I feel like I am failing, when the shadow of my father's betrayal looms so large that I cannot see past it. But there are also days when the sun comes through my kitchen window and lands on my grandmother's letter, and I remember that I survived. I did more than survive. I saved myself. That night at the dinner table, when I switched those glasses, I took my life back. I chose myself over the father who had never chosen me. I refused to be a victim of his greed and his control and his fundamental inability to love me as I deserved to be loved. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. And it was the first step on a long road to becoming who I am today. I do not know what the future holds. I do not know if I will ever reconcile with my father or if I will carry this wound forever. I do not know if my relationship with David will last or if I will sabotage it with my trust issues. I do not know if I will ever stop looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. But I do know this. I am stronger than I thought I was. I am more resilient than my father ever gave me credit for. I am capable of protecting myself, of setting boundaries, of walking away from people who hurt me even when those people share my blood. And I know that I am not alone. I have Tommy, who loves me despite everything our family has been through. I have David, who is patient and kind and determined to earn my trust. I have friends who rallied around me during the trial and the aftermath. I have Dr. Chen, who helps me make sense of the chaos in my head. I have Rosie the cat, who purrs against my chest when I cannot sleep at night. I have myself, and for the first time in my life, that feels like enough. If you're reading this, if you have made it this far in my story, I want you to know something. Whatever you are going through, whatever darkness you are facing, you are stronger than you think. You have the power to protect yourself, to save yourself, to choose yourself. It might not feel like it right now. It might feel like the weight of the world is crushing you. But you can survive this. You can come out on the other side. I know because I did. My name is Melissa Henderson. 6 months ago, my father tried to drug me at a family dinner. I saw what he was doing and I switched our glasses. What happened next was terrifying, but it was also the beginning of the rest of my life, a life that finally belongs to me. I woke up this morning to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and Rosie kneading my chest with her little paws. David was already up, making coffee in the kitchen, and I could hear him humming something off-key. Outside, birds were singing, and my tomato plants were heavy with fruit. For a moment, I just lay there, taking it all in, the peace of it, the normalcy of it, the sheer miraculous ordinariness of a life that I had built with my own hands from the wreckage of what my family had done to me. Then I got up, put on my robe, and went to start my day. There is still so much I do not know. There is still so much uncertainty ahead. But right now, in this moment, I am okay. I am more than okay. I am free. And that is everything. I think back sometimes to the girl I was before that dinner. The girl who still hoped her father would change, who still craved his approval, who still believed that if she just tried hard enough, she could earn his love. I feel tender toward that girl. I want to reach back through time and hold her and tell her that it was never her fault, that she was always enough, that the problem was never her. But I also know that I had to go through everything I went through to become who I am. The pain was the crucible. The betrayal was the catalyst. Without that terrible dinner, without seeing my father's hand near my glass, without making the choice to switch our drinks, I might have spent my whole life waiting for him to become someone he could never be. Now I know. Now I am free. My grandmother was right about me. I am brave. I am strong. I am capable of so much more than I ever knew. It just took losing everything I thought I wanted to find everything I actually needed. David comes into the bedroom with 2 cups of coffee. He hands one to me and sits on the edge of the bed, his hair still messy from sleep. David said, "Good morning, beautiful. How did you sleep?" I said, "Better. I am sleeping better." David said, "Good. That is really good, Mel." He leans over and kisses my forehead, soft and sweet, and I let myself lean into him, let myself accept the comfort he is offering, let myself believe that this is real and good and mine, because it is. All of it. Mine. I built this life from nothing. I built it from the ashes of my family and the ruins of my trust and the fragments of my broken heart. I built it one day at a time, one choice at a time, one small act of self-love at a time. And I am proud of it. I am proud of myself. For maybe the first time in my life, I am genuinely deeply proud of who I have become. My father is in prison. My stepmother is in prison. My childhood home has been sold to strangers. The family I grew up in no longer exists. But I have a new family now. A family I chose. A family that chose me back. Tommy and his wife. David and his endless patience. My friends who stood by me through the darkest days. Dr. Chen, who helped me find my way back to myself, and me. I am part of my own family now. I belong to myself. That is the gift my grandmother gave me. Not just the money or the properties or the jewelry. She gave me permission to believe in myself. She gave me a foundation to stand on when everything else crumbled. She gave me a letter that I read whenever I forget who I am. She gave me hope. I carry that hope with me every day. It is there when I wake up in the morning and when I go to sleep at night. It is there when I am happy and when I am sad and when I am scared. It is part of me now, woven into the fabric of who I am. My name is Melissa Henderson. I am 28 years old. I live in a small house with a garden and a cat. I have a job I love and a man who loves me and a brother who is my best friend. I have scars, visible and invisible, from the family that hurt me. But I also have strength, hard-won and precious, from the battles I have survived. I am not the person I was a year ago. I am not the person I will be a year from now. I am exactly who I need to be, right now, in this moment. And that is enough. That is more than enough. That is everything. The day after my father's sentencing, I went to my grandmother's grave. I had not been there since the funeral, too caught up in the chaos of investigations and trials and trying to hold my life together. But that day, the day after it was finally over, I needed to be there. It was a cold morning, the kind of late autumn day where the sky is gray and the leaves are brown and everything feels like it is waiting for something. I brought flowers, yellow roses that my grandmother had always loved, and I laid them on her headstone. For a long time, I just stood there. I did not know what to say. I did not know how to explain everything that had happened since she died, all the ways her gift had changed my life, all the ways her faith in me had been tested and proven right. Finally, I just spoke. Out loud to her, as if she could hear me. I said, "I did it, Grandma. I survived. I took care of myself just like you told me to. It was hard. It was so hard. But I did it." The wind picked up, rustling the leaves on the trees surrounding the cemetery. It felt like a response, though I knew it was just the weather. I said, "I miss you. I wish you were here to see who I am becoming. I wish I could tell you everything that happened. I wish I could thank you properly for believing in me when I did not believe in myself." My voice broke on the last word, and I had to stop and breathe. The tears came then, hot and fast, sliding down my cheeks and dripping off my chin. I let them come. I did not try to hold them back. I said, "I am going to make you proud, Grandma. I am going to use the life you gave me to do something good. I promise. I promise." I stayed at her grave for another hour, talking and crying and remembering. When I finally left, I felt lighter somehow, like I had set down a burden I did not know I was carrying, like I had finally said goodbye. Life goes on. That is what I have learned through all of this. No matter what happens, no matter how terrible or traumatic or world-shattering, life goes on. The sun rises, the days pass, the seasons change, and you have a choice. You can let the darkness consume you, or you can find a way to keep moving forward. I chose to keep moving forward. I chose to honor my grandmother's memory by living the life she wanted for me. I chose to let my father's betrayal make me stronger instead of breaking me. Some days that choice feels impossible. Some days the weight of everything is so heavy that I can barely get out of bed. Some days I wonder if I will ever truly heal, or if I will carry these wounds forever. But then I look at my life. I look at the garden I planted, the relationships I have built, the career I have worked so hard for. I look at the woman I see in the mirror, the one who survived her own father's attempt to destroy her. And I know that the choice was worth it, that I was worth it. My grandmother saw something in me that I could not see in myself. She saw strength and resilience and potential. She saw a woman who could weather any storm, who could overcome any obstacle, who could turn even the darkest tragedy into something beautiful. I am still becoming that woman. I am still growing into the vision she had for me. But I am closer now than I have ever been. And that is enough for today. That is enough for this moment. That is enough for this one, precious, imperfect life. My name is Melissa Henderson. This is my story, and it is not over yet. But the worst part is behind me. The night is over, the dawn is here, and I am ready for whatever comes next. There are moments, even now, when the memory of that dinner catches me off guard. I will be doing something completely ordinary, like washing dishes or walking to work or reading a book before bed, and suddenly I am back at that table. I can smell the roast chicken and the wine. I can see the candlelight flickering on the crystal glasses. I can feel my heart pounding as I watch my father's hand move toward my drink. Dr. Chen calls these flashbacks. She says they are normal, that they are my brain's way of processing trauma. She says they will fade over time, that eventually the memory will lose its sharp edges and become just another part of my history, no more painful than any other difficult experience. I hope she is right. I hope that someday I will be able to think about that night without my chest tightening and my hands shaking. I hope that someday it will feel like something that happened to someone else, a character in a story, rather than something that happened to me. But even if that day never comes, I know I will be okay. Because I have learned something important through all of this. I have learned that I am capable of facing the unimaginable. I have learned that I can survive things I never thought I could survive. I have learned that the people who are supposed to protect us are sometimes the ones we need protection from, and that realizing this does not make us weak or broken. It makes us wise. Tommy called me last night. He wanted to tell me that his wife is pregnant. They are going to have a baby, a little girl, due in the spring. Tommy said, "I want her to know you, Mel. I want her to grow up with an aunt who is brave and strong and will not take any nonsense from anyone. I want her to learn from your example." I cried when he told me that. Happy tears for once. The idea that I could be an example to anyone, that my story could be something other than a cautionary tale, felt almost too good to believe. I said, "I would love that, Tommy. I would love to be part of her life." Tommy said, "You already are. You are part of all our lives. We are family, Mel. Real family. The kind that matters." He was right. We were family. Not the family we were born into, but the family we had chosen to become. The family that had emerged from the wreckage of our father's betrayal, stronger and more honest than the one we had grown up in. I think about that a lot now, about what family really means. It is not blood or genetics or the people you happen to share a last name with. It is the people who show up for you when you need them. It is the people who see you at your worst and love you anyway. It is the people who choose you, again and again, even when it would be easier to walk away. I have that kind of family now. It took me 27 years to find it, and it came at a terrible cost. But I have it, and I will never take it for granted. David asked me to move in with him last week. We were sitting on his couch, watching some terrible reality show and eating takeout Chinese food, when he turned to me with this look on his face. This nervous, hopeful, vulnerable look that I had never seen before. David said, "I have been thinking about something. About us. About the future." My heart started beating faster. Part of me wanted to run, to protect myself from whatever he was about to say. But I made myself stay. I made myself listen. David said, "I love you, Mel. I love you in a way I have never loved anyone before. And I know you have been through a lot. And I know trust is hard for you. And I know this is probably too fast. But I want to wake up with you every morning. I want to come home to you every night. I want to build a life with you, a real life, the kind neither of us ever thought we would have." He paused, taking a deep breath. David said, "Will you move in with me?" I did not answer right away. I sat there, looking at this man who had been so patient with me, so gentle, so willing to wait for me to be ready. And I thought about all the reasons I should say no, all the ways it could go wrong, all the pain I might be setting myself up for. But then I thought about my grandmother's letter, about being brave, about building the life I deserved, and I said yes. We are moving my things into his apartment next month. It is bigger than mine, with room for Rosie and all my books and the plants I have accumulated over the years. David has already started clearing out closet space for me. He bought extra hangers and a new dresser and a shoe rack that he assembled himself, cursing at the instructions the entire time. It feels like hope. It feels like possibility. It feels like the beginning of something I never dared to dream about. I know it might not work out. I know there are no guarantees in life, no promises that cannot be broken. I know that love is a risk, that trust is a gamble, that every time you open your heart to someone you are giving them the power to hurt you. But I also know that the alternative is worse. Living in fear, building walls, refusing to let anyone in. That is not living. That is just existing. That is letting my father win, even from his prison cell. I refuse to do that. I refuse to let what he did define the rest of my life. So I am taking the leap. I am moving in with David. I am building a future with someone who loves me, who sees me, who chooses me every single day. And if it falls apart, if everything goes wrong, I will survive. I have survived worse. I will pick up the pieces and start again, because that is what I do. That is who I have become. A survivor, a fighter, a woman who knows her own worth. I am sitting at my desk now, writing this all down. Outside my window, the sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. Rosie is asleep on my bed, her tail twitching as she dreams about whatever cats dream about. In a few hours, David will come over, and we will cook dinner together and watch a movie and fall asleep on the couch like we always do. It is an ordinary evening, a normal life, the kind of life I never thought I would have, and I am grateful for it, every single moment of it, because I know how close I came to losing everything. I know that if I had drunk that wine, if I had not seen what my father was doing, my life would look very different right now. I might be under his control, stripped of my inheritance and my autonomy. I might be trapped in a nightmare with no way out, but I am not. I am here. I am free. I am building a life that belongs to me. That is the miracle. That is the gift. That is the thing I will never, ever take for granted. My name is Melissa Henderson. I am a daughter, a sister, a girlfriend, a friend. I am a survivor of family betrayal, a fighter who refused to be a victim. I am a woman who learned, the hard way, that the people who are supposed to love you are not always the people who will protect you. But I am also a woman who learned that she could protect herself, that she could trust herself, that she was worthy of love and safety and happiness, regardless of what her father made her believe. And that is the most important thing I have ever learned. As I write these final words, I feel something I have not felt in a long time. Peace. Real, genuine, bone-deep peace. Not the absence of pain, because the pain is still there, lurking beneath the surface. But peace anyway. Peace despite the pain. Peace because of it. Because the pain taught me things. It taught me who I was, what I was capable of, what I was willing to fight for. It stripped away all the illusions and left only the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was, set me free. My father is in prison. My stepmother is in prison. The family I grew up in no longer exists. And somehow, impossibly, I am okay. More than okay. I am thriving. This is my story. This is my truth. And I am no longer afraid to tell it. Because I survived. I saved myself. And that is something no one can ever take away from me. Not my father, not Vanessa, not anyone. I am Melissa Henderson. And I am finally free. The weeks after I agreed to move in with David were a blur of activity. Packing boxes, sorting through years of accumulated belongings, deciding what to keep and what to let go. It was more than just a physical move. It was a symbolic one. I was choosing to trust someone again, to build a shared life, to believe that not everyone would betray me. Some days, the fear was overwhelming. I would wake up in the middle of the night, my heart racing, convinced that I was making a terrible mistake. What if David changed? What if he revealed some hidden darkness like my father had? What if I was walking straight into another nightmare? But then morning would come, and David would text me something silly, or show up at my door with coffee and pastries, or call just to hear my voice. And I would remember that he was not my father, that his kindness was not a manipulation, that his love was real. Dr. Chen and I talked about this fear a lot in our sessions. Dr. Chen said, "It makes sense that you are scared. Your father taught you that the people who say they love you can hurt you in the worst ways possible. That is a lesson that is hard to unlearn." I said, "So how do I unlearn it? How do I stop waiting for David to become someone terrible?" Dr. Chen said, "You give yourself evidence to the contrary. Every day that David shows up for you, every time he proves himself trustworthy, that is evidence. You collect that evidence. You remind yourself of it when the fear comes. Eventually, the evidence will outweigh the fear." She was right. Slowly, day by day, I was learning to trust again, not blindly, not naively, but carefully and intentionally. I was learning to distinguish between reasonable caution and irrational fear. I was learning that being hurt in the past did not mean I would be hurt in the future. Tommy and his wife Jennifer invited me over for dinner one evening. Jennifer was starting to show now, her belly just beginning to round with the life growing inside her. She glowed with happiness, and Tommy could not stop smiling. Jennifer said, "We wanted to talk to you about something, about the baby." I felt my heart skip a beat, suddenly nervous. Jennifer said, "We have been thinking about names, and if it is okay with you, we would like to name her Rose. After your grandmother." I started crying before I could stop myself. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears that washed away some of the pain I had been carrying for so long. I said, "She would have loved that. She would have been so honored." Tommy said, "We thought maybe her middle name could be Helen. After Mom, Rose Helen. What do you think?" I could not speak for a moment. The idea that my grandmother and my mother would be remembered this way, honored this way, felt like healing. It felt like proof that good things could come from terrible pain, that love could survive even death and betrayal. I said, "I think it is perfect. I think they would both be so proud." Jennifer came around the table and hugged me, her belly pressing gently against me. In that moment, I felt connected to something larger than myself, to generations of women who had loved and suffered and survived, to the family I had lost and the family I was building, to the hope that life could be good again, that children could grow up feeling safe and loved in ways that I never had. The move happened on a rainy Saturday in March. Tommy and David carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs while Jennifer and I unpacked in the apartment, organizing my clothes in the closet, my books on the shelves, my plants on the windowsills. Rosie explored her new territory cautiously, sniffing every corner and eventually settling on the couch in a patch of sunlight. By evening, most of my things were unpacked. The apartment looked different now, a blend of David's minimalist style and my collected clutter. Our books were mixed together on the shelves, our dishes shared cabinet space, our clothes hung side by side in the closet. It looked like home. Our home. After Tommy and Jennifer left, David and I collapsed on the couch, exhausted and sore from all the lifting and carrying. He pulled me close and I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. David said, "How are you feeling about all this?" "Really?" I thought about it for a moment before answering. I said, "Scared, happy, hopeful, terrified, all of it at once." David said, "That sounds about right." I said, "Thank you for being patient with me. For not giving up when I was too afraid to let you in." David said, "You are worth the wait, Mel. You are worth everything." I looked up at him, at this man who had somehow broken through all my defenses, and I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not doubt, but something else. Something that felt like trust. I said, "I love you." It was not the first time I had said it. But it was the first time I said it and meant it completely, without reservation, without the voice in the back of my mind whispering warnings and predictions of disaster. David said, "I love you too. So much." We sat there in the fading light, holding each other, and I let myself believe that this was real, that this was mine, that I could keep it. Work became easier after the move. Having David to come home to, having a life outside of my trauma, gave me perspective. I stopped staying late at the office to avoid going home to an empty apartment. I started saying no to projects that would consume all my time and energy. I began to see my job as just one part of my life, rather than the only thing that defined me. My boss, Catherine, noticed the change. Catherine said, "You seem different lately, Melissa. Lighter somehow. Things going well?" I said, "Things are going well. Really well, actually." Catherine said, "Good. You deserve that. You have always worked so hard, but I could tell you were carrying something heavy. I am glad you are finding balance." I thought about telling her the truth, about what had happened with my father, but I decided against it. Some things were too private, too painful, to share in a professional context. Instead, I just smiled and thanked her. but her words stayed with me. Lighter. That was exactly how I felt. Like I had been carrying a crushing weight for years and had finally been able to set it down. I started doing things I had not done in years. I joined a book club at the local library. I took a pottery class on Wednesday evenings. I went to museums and concerts and plays. I rediscovered the pleasure of doing things just for enjoyment, not because I was trying to prove something or escape from something. David and I fell into routines. Saturday morning trips to the farmer's market. Sunday afternoon walks along the lake. Tuesday night dinners at the Thai restaurant down the street. Small, ordinary rituals that made our life together feel real and solid. One night, while we were cooking dinner together, David asked me something that caught me off guard. David said, "Have you thought about what you want to do with your grandmother's money? Long term, I mean." I said some. I already set up the scholarship fund. And I bought the house. But there is still a lot left. David said, "What would make you happy? If you could do anything with it, what would you do?" I had been thinking about this question for months, turning it over in my mind during sleepless nights and long commutes. What would my grandmother want me to do? What would honor her memory? I said, "I think I want to help other people who have been hurt by their families. Start some kind of organization that provides legal assistance and counseling to survivors of family violence and financial abuse. Make sure that other people do not have to fight their battles alone the way I did." David stopped chopping vegetables and looked at me, his eyes soft. David said, "That is beautiful, Mel. Your grandmother would be so proud." I said, "You think so?" David said, "I know so. She gave you that money to build a better life. And that is what you are doing, not just for yourself, but for other people too." The idea took root in my mind and would not let go. Over the next few months, I researched nonprofits and legal aid organizations. I talked to lawyers and social workers and other survivors. I drafted mission statements and budget projections. I poured all the energy I had once spent on fear and anger into this new project, this new purpose. I decided to call it Rose's House, after my grandmother. It would provide free legal representation for people dealing with family financial abuse. It would offer counseling services and support groups. It would be a safe place for people who had been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love them. Tommy was thrilled when I told him about the plan. Tommy said, "This is exactly what Grandma would have wanted. You are taking something terrible and turning it into something that will help so many people." I said, "I hope so. I hope I can make a difference." Tommy said, "You already have, Mel. Look at how far you have come. Look at the life you have built. You are proof that survival is possible." His words meant more to me than he probably knew. For so long, I had seen myself as broken, as damaged beyond repair. But Tommy saw something different. He saw strength and resilience and hope. And slowly, I was starting to see it too. Rose's House officially opened its doors in September, 2 years after that terrible dinner. We held a small ceremony, just family and close friends and some of the lawyers and counselors who had agreed to volunteer their time. I gave a speech about my grandmother, about her belief in opportunity and second chances, about the importance of helping people reclaim their lives from those who had tried to take them. Jennifer was there with baby Rose, who was now 6 months old and absolutely perfect. She had my grandmother's eyes, bright and intelligent and full of curiosity. When I held her, I felt a connection to the past and the future simultaneously. This child carried my grandmother's name and my mother's name, and she would grow up in a family that valued her for who she was rather than who they wanted her to be. The cycle was broken. The pattern had changed. I said, "Thank you all for being here today." My grandmother used to say that the best revenge is a life well lived. I did not understand what she meant when I was younger. I thought revenge had to be loud and dramatic, that justice had to look a certain way. But now I get it. The best revenge against people who tried to diminish you is to become someone they could never imagine, to build something beautiful from the rubble they left behind. That is what Rose's house represents. It is proof that we can survive, that we can heal, that we can use our pain to help other people find their way out of darkness. David squeezed my hand as I spoke, and I squeezed back. After the ceremony, people came up to thank me, to tell me their own stories of family betrayal and survival. I listened to each one, holding their pain and their hope in my heart. This was my purpose now. This was what I was meant to do. The prison called me one afternoon in late October. My father wanted to see me. He had been requesting visits for months, but I had always declined. I was not ready. I did not know if I would ever be ready, but something about this request felt different. The officer who called said that my father had been writing letters, poetry about regret and fatherhood, and the mistakes we cannot undo. She said he had been attending counseling sessions and workshops on emotional intelligence and healthy relationships. She said he seemed genuinely changed. I did not trust it. How could I? But I also felt a small, foolish flicker of curiosity. What would he say to me after all this time? What could he possibly say that would make any difference? I talked to Dr. Chen about it. Dr. Chen said, "You do not owe him anything. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not even a visit. You only need to do what is right for you." I said, "I know, but I think I need to see him, not for him, for me. I need to look him in the eye and know that I am not afraid of him anymore." Dr. Chen said, "Then do it. But prepare yourself. He may not be the person you hope he is. And that is okay. You can handle whatever happens." I went to the prison on a gray November morning. David offered to come with me, but I needed to do this alone. This was my battle, my closure, my choice. The visiting room was exactly how I imagined it would be. Cold and institutional, with guards watching from the corners and other families speaking in hushed voices at other tables. My father looked older than I remembered, thinner, with more gray in his hair and new lines around his eyes. He wore prison clothes that did not fit quite right, and his hands trembled when he saw me. Richard said, "Melissa, thank you for coming. I was not sure you would." I sat down across from him, my spine straight, my hands folded in my lap. I would not show weakness. I would not give him anything. I said, "I am here because I need to say something to you. And then I am going to leave, and you are never going to contact me again. Do you understand?" He nodded, his eyes filling with tears that I refused to feel sorry for. I said, "You tried to destroy me. You tried to take away the one good thing my grandmother gave me. You drugged me, your own daughter, because your greed and your pride were more important than my safety. And I want you to know that you failed. You did not break me. You made me stronger. I have built a life that you can never touch. I have people who love me, really love me, in ways you never could, and I am using my pain to help other people, to make sure they do not have to face what I faced alone." Richard said, "I know. I heard about Rose's house. Melissa, I am so sorry. I know that does not mean anything. I know it does not fix what I did, but I need to say it. I was wrong. About everything. I let my ego and Vanessa's manipulation turn me into a monster. I hurt the one person I should have protected, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." I looked at him, this broken old man who was my father, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no love. Just emptiness where he used to be. I said, "I do not forgive you. I do not think I ever will. But I do not hate you either. You are just a person who made terrible choices, and now you are living with the consequences. I hope you find some kind of peace in here. But it will not be with me. I am done carrying you with me. I am letting you go." I stood up to leave, and he reached out like he wanted to touch my hand. I pulled away. Richard said, "Will you ever come back? Will I ever see you again?" I said, "No. Goodbye, Dad." I walked out of that prison and did not look back, and as I drove away, I felt something lift from my shoulders. He was my past, but he was not my future. I had taken my power back, and he could never have it again. David was waiting for me when I got home. He did not ask questions, just held me while I cried out all the emotions I had been holding in. Relief, grief, anger, peace. All of it poured out until I was empty and clean. David said, "You are so brave, Mel. Do you know that? You are the bravest person I have ever met." I said, "I do not feel brave. I feel tired." David said, "Brave people are always tired. That is how you know they are actually fighting instead of just talking about it." That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in months. I wrote about the visit, about seeing my father and realizing that he had no power over me anymore. I wrote about how far I had come, about Rose's house and baby Rose and the life I had built from nothing. I wrote about David and Tommy and all the people who had helped me survive. And then I wrote something I had never written before. I am proud of myself. I am proud of who I am becoming. I am proud of the woman I see in the mirror. It was true. For the first time in my life, it was completely, unquestionably true. Winter came, and with it, the holidays. David and I hosted Thanksgiving at our apartment, inviting Tommy and Jennifer and baby Rose, along with a few close friends. It was loud and chaotic and full of laughter. We cooked too much food and played board games and told stories. It felt like family, real family, the kind built on choice and love rather than obligation and blood. As I watched baby Rose toddle around the living room, chasing after Rosie the cat and giggling with delight, I thought about the future, about the woman she would become, growing up in a family that valued her for who she was rather than who they wanted her to be, about the opportunities she would have, the choices she would make, the life she would build. And I thought about all the other children out there, the ones stuck in families like mine had been, the ones being hurt and diminished by the people who were supposed to protect them. Rose's house could not save them all, but it could save some, and that had to be enough. David found me standing by the window watching the snow fall. David said, "What are you thinking about?" I said, "The future. How strange it is that something so terrible led to something so good. If my father had not tried to hurt me, I would never have started Rose's house. I might never have found you. I might have spent my whole life trying to earn love from someone who could never give it." David said, "Do you ever wish it had happened differently? That your father had been different?" I thought about that for a long moment. I said, "Sometimes, but mostly no, because that would mean I would be different too. And I like who I am now. I like the life I have built, and I would not trade that for anything, not even for the father I always wanted but never had." David kissed my temple, soft and gentle. David said, "I am glad you are who you are, exactly who you are." I leaned into him, feeling safe and loved and whole. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering everything in white. A blank page, a new beginning, a future full of possibility. Spring came, and with it, new life. Jennifer gave birth to Rose Helen in April, on a day when the cherry blossoms were blooming and the air smelled like hope. I held my niece in the hospital, this tiny, perfect human who represented everything good in the world, and I made her a silent promise. I promised, "I will always protect you. I will always tell you that you are enough. I will always be the kind of family member you deserve. I will break the cycle. I will be better." Tommy stood beside me, his arm around Jennifer, his eyes wet with happy tears. Tommy said, "Thank you, Mel, for everything, for surviving, for fighting, for showing me what real strength looks like." I said, "We did it together, Tommy. We both made it out." Tommy said, "Yeah, we did." As I held baby Rose, I thought about my grandmother, the woman she was named after. I wished she could be here to meet her namesake, to see what had become of the money she left me, to know that her faith in me had been justified. But in a way, she was here, in Rose's house, in baby Rose's name, in the strength I had found within myself. She was here in every choice I made to be brave, to be kind, to build something beautiful from the ruins of what my father had destroyed. Dr. Chen and I had our final session in May. After 3 years of weekly meetings, I was ready to stop therapy. Not because I was fixed or healed completely, but because I had learned the tools I needed to navigate my life. I knew how to recognize unhealthy patterns. I knew how to set boundaries. I knew how to ask for help when I needed it. Dr. Chen said, "I am so proud of you, Melissa. When you first came to me, you were barely holding yourself together. And now look at you. You have built an incredible life. You have helped countless people through Rose's house. You have learned to love and trust again. You have done the work." I said, "I could not have done it without you." Dr. Chen said, "Yes, you could have. I just gave you some tools and a safe place to use them. The strength was always yours. You just needed to discover it." I hugged her goodbye, grateful for everything she had taught me, everything she had helped me see in myself. And as I left her office for the last time, I felt ready. Ready for whatever came next. Ready to live my life without constant therapy, without constantly processing my trauma. Ready to just be Melissa. Not Melissa the survivor or Melissa the victim, but just Melissa. A woman who had been hurt and had healed. A woman who had been broken and had put herself back together. A woman who had every reason to give up but chose to keep going instead. Rose's house grew over the following year. We helped 53 people in our first 12 months, providing legal assistance and counseling and support. Some cases were straightforward, a matter of filing paperwork and establishing financial independence. Others were complex, involving years of abuse and manipulation that required long-term intervention. Every person who walked through our doors had a story, and every story broke my heart and made me more determined to keep fighting, because I knew how it felt to be them. I knew the fear and the shame and the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, would believe them and help them. I hired a full-time staff of 3 lawyers and 2 counselors. We operated out of a small office downtown, funded by my grandmother's money and some grants we had secured from philanthropic organizations. It was not much, but it was making a difference. Real, tangible difference in people's lives. One day, a woman named Claire came to our office. She was 63 years old and had been financially abused by her adult son for over a decade. He had convinced her to sign over power of attorney when she was diagnosed with arthritis, and then he had systematically drained her accounts, leaving her with almost nothing. Claire said, "I do not know what to do. He is my son. I love him, but he is destroying my life." I sat with her for 2 hours, listening to her story, feeling the familiar ache of recognition. I knew what it was like to be betrayed by family. I knew the impossible conflict between love and self-preservation. I said, "You can love him and still protect yourself. Those 2 things are not mutually exclusive. You deserve to be safe and secure, regardless of what he has done." Claire started crying. Claire said, "No one has ever said that to me before. Everyone tells me I should forgive him, that he is family, that I should give him another chance." I said, "Family is not an excuse for abuse, and forgiveness does not mean letting someone continue to hurt you. We are going to help you, Claire. We are going to get your life back." And we did. It took months of legal battles and court appearances, but eventually, Claire regained control of her finances. Her son was ordered to repay what he had stolen, and she was granted a restraining order. The last time I saw her, she was smiling for the first time since I had met her. Claire said, "Thank you. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for fighting for me." I said, "Thank you for having the courage to ask for help." "You saved yourself, Claire. I just gave you the tools. Stories like Claire's kept me going. They reminded me why I had started Rose's house, why my grandmother's money mattered, why surviving my father's betrayal had been worth it. I was not just helping other people. I was honoring everyone who had ever been hurt by someone they trusted. I was saying loudly and clearly that this was not okay, that we deserved better, that we could fight back and win. David proposed to me on a clear night in June, under a sky full of stars. We were at the cabin in Michigan, the one my grandmother had left me. We had spent the day hiking and swimming in the lake, and we were sitting on the dock watching the sun set. David said, Mel, there is something I want to ask you. I turned to look at him, and he was holding a small velvet box. My heart started racing. David said, I know you have been hurt. I know trust is hard for you. But I want you to know that I see you. All of you. The strong parts and the scared parts and everything in between. And I love all of it. I want to spend my life with you. I want to build a family with you. I want to grow old with you. Melissa Henderson, will you marry me? I looked at the ring, simple and beautiful, and then at David's face, open and hopeful and full of love. And I thought about how far I had come, from the girl who believed she was not enough to the woman who knew her own worth, from the daughter who had been betrayed by her father to the partner who had learned to trust again. I said, yes, I will marry you. He slipped the ring on my finger, and we kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Complete, unguarded happiness. Joy without reservation. Hope for a future that was mine to create. We were married the following spring in a small ceremony at the cabin. Tommy was there, and Jennifer and baby Rose. Dr. Chen came, and Catherine from work, and all the friends who had stood by me through the darkest times. David's family welcomed me with open arms, giving me the loving in-laws I had never thought I would have. As I walked down the aisle toward David, I thought about my mother and my grandmother. I wished they could be there to see this moment, but in a way, they were. They were in the strength I had found to survive. They were in the love I had learned to accept. They were in every choice I made to be brave and open and real. The officiant asked if anyone objected to our union, and the silence was peaceful. No ghosts from the past, no dark shadows lurking at the edges, just love and light and the promise of a future built on truth. When David and I exchanged vows, I spoke from my heart. I said, David, you taught me that love does not have to hurt, that trust can be earned and kept, that I am worthy of gentleness and patience and unwavering support. You saw me at my worst and chose to stay. You held me when I cried and celebrated when I succeeded. You believed in me even when I could not believe in myself. I promise to love you with the same fierceness and tenderness you have shown me. I promise to be your partner in everything. I promise to keep choosing you every single day for the rest of my life. There was not a dry eye in the place. Even tough, stoic Tommy was wiping tears from his face. David said, Melissa, you are the strongest person I know. You survived things that would have broken most people, and you came out the other side with your heart intact. You turned your pain into purpose. You built something beautiful from nothing. Being loved by you is the greatest honor of my life. I promise to be worthy of that love. I promise to protect you, to support you, to challenge you to keep growing. I promise to be your safe place, your home, your partner in all things. I love you. I will always love you. We were pronounced husband and wife, and everyone cheered. Baby Rose, now almost 2 years old, clapped her little hands and shouted, Auntie Mel. At the reception, Tommy gave a toast. Tommy said, I have watched my sister overcome things that no one should have to face. I have seen her at her lowest and at her highest. And through it all, she has never stopped fighting. She has never stopped believing that life could be good. Mel, you inspire me every single day. You showed me what real courage looks like. And David, you are the luckiest man alive to have earned her trust and her love. Take care of her. Love her the way she deserves. And welcome to our family. I hugged him tight, grateful for this brother who had grown and changed alongside me, who had questioned everything he thought he knew about our father and chosen truth over comfort. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and the cleanup was done, David and I sat on the dock, just like we had the night he proposed. The stars were bright overhead, and the water was calm and still. David said, How are you feeling, Mrs. Garrett? I smiled at my new name, at the choice I had made to take his name and leave my father's behind. I said, I feel happy, really, truly happy, not just in this moment, but about my whole life, about who I am and where I am going. Is that weird? David said. That is not weird at all. That is exactly how it should be. I said, 5 years ago, I never would have believed this was possible, that I could be this happy, this free, this whole. My father tried to break me, and instead, he set me free. Is not that strange? David said. Not strange. Just proof that you are stronger than anyone who ever tried to hurt you. I leaned my head on his shoulder and looked up at the stars. I said, thank you for loving me, for seeing me, for not giving up. David said, thank you for letting me in, for trusting me with your heart, for choosing me. We sat there until the moon rose high and the night grew cold, and then we went inside, to the cabin my grandmother had left me, to begin our life together. A life built on love, not fear, on trust, not suspicion, on hope, not bitterness. A life that was finally, completely, mine. My name is Melissa Garrett now. I am 30 years old. I am a wife, a sister, an aunt, a friend, an advocate, a survivor. I have known betrayal, and I have known healing. I have been broken, and I have been made whole. I have learned that family is what you make it, that love is a choice you make every day, and that the strongest thing you can do is choose yourself. I am not the girl I was before that dinner. That girl is gone, mourned, laid to rest beside all the illusions she carried about who her father was. But I am also not just a survivor of that night. I am so much more than what was done to me. I am the woman my grandmother knew I could be. I am the person my mother would be proud of. I am the partner David chose and the sister Tommy can depend on. I am the founder of Rose's House and the protector of people who need someone to fight for them. I am Melissa Garrett, and this is my life. A life I built from the ashes of betrayal. A life I fought for and earned and claimed as my own. And it is beautiful, despite everything. Because of everything, it is beautiful, and it is mine.